our first campus webinar, I guess second campus webinar. Well, this is the first one hosted by SPRC. If you have not dialed in, please go ahead and do so. That number is listed on the, I guess you wouldn't be able to hear me, but it's listed on the slide if you need it again. I'm Sheila Krishnan. I'm a campus prevention specialist with SPRC. Bonnie, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Lipton. I'm also a campus prevention specialist at SPRC.
Great, thanks. So Bonnie and I will be facilitating the webinar today. We have a great group of panelists who we will introduce a little bit later on. I'm going to pass it back to Zoe first, who's helping with the technology today, to go over a few things for us.
Hi, so just very quickly, if you're having any technical problems joining the webinar, you can call 617-618-2984, and that's an SPRC person can help you, or you can call Adobe Connect at 800-422-3623. Everyone will be muted except for the speakers for the entire webinar, so if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat box on the left-hand side of your screen. And lastly, you can make your presentation larger and smaller by clicking on those 4 black arrows that are in the upper, or gray arrows that are in the upper right-hand corner of the slide deck, and it will make the screen bigger so you can see things on the slides more clearly. And then you click it again to make it smaller, and you can see the attendees in the chat box. Thanks. Sheila?
Great. Before we get started, I wanted to just mention, so this is the first webinar that SPRC is hosting in your new grantee orientation series. If there's any confusion about the orientation series or when the webinars are scheduled for or what we'll be going over, please do let your prevention specialist know, and they will make sure that you get another copy of the calendar and syllabus that outlines the series, so you have that information. Several of us have already had our first monthly call or even second calls together, and you should have received a document with our photos that clarifies each of the roles of who will be helping you with your grant. But I wanted to just mention again quickly, since I know it can be a little confusing when you're starting the grant to keep track of who does what. So the prevention specialists here at SPRC work closely with your SAMHSA project officers and your ICF liaisons, but our main role is to provide you with technical assistance related to the programmatic aspects of your grants, so everything related to the planning and implementation of your program. So we know that several campuses often do things like trainings or develop communication materials or campaigns. Some of you may be working on partnership building or planning events. So any questions that you have that come up in the process of developing those items are things that you could ask us for help with. And sometimes this kind of happens in the form of you having challenges, and we can brainstorm some solutions together. But we can also help you identify resources or connect you to other grantees who may be doing similar work. And most, all of you should be signed up on the campus listserv so that you can do that as well. And often we may not have the answers immediately, but we do have a whole team of people here at SPRC that we can consult with to support you as you need it. So I just wanted to clarify again what the prevention specialist role is for you. In regards to today's webinar, I mentioned that we have a great panel set up who we'll be introducing you to shortly. This consists of current campus and alumni grantees, and we'll hear from them about what their lessons learned have been over the course of their grants. Before we do get to the panel portion of the webinar, we wanted to spend some time introducing you to some of the concepts and findings related to sustainability planning. So when we talk about sustainability planning, which is sort of related to the slide that you should see on your screens now, talking about beginning with the end in mind. So when we say sustainability, what we really mean is strategies to help you continue suicide prevention on your campuses after the grant is over. We know that there's not any kind of one-size-fits-all model, and that all of your campuses are very different. Sustainability may look pretty different for each of you. I know that we've seen, sometimes this will look like making this work fall into someone's existing role who's on your campus, and maybe changing what their responsibilities are. They may help to continue coordinating trainings after the grant is over. For other people, you may be able to sustain larger aspects of your programs. You may be able to create new positions on your campus dedicated to suicide prevention or mental health promotion. So we'll be going over some of the findings that we've gathered from our experience talking to past grantees and working with grantees about items that they said really made a difference in how building a suicide prevention program with beginning with the end in mind really helped. And some of you may be feeling like talking about sustainability at this point seems a bit premature since you're just getting started out and you're still learning about the grant requirements and doing hiring and things like that. And the reason why we wanted to talk about it today is that over the course of time, many grantees have said really having a vision for what they were creating that involved a vision for suicide prevention that went beyond this 3-year period of funding was helpful to them, and that made a difference in what activities they chose or what strategies they focused on and how they implemented their program. And one great quote that we've heard from a grantee was that building a house is a lot harder than maintaining a house in terms of costs and in terms of how you build the infrastructure. So I think sometimes it's helpful to think about how you can set up your program in a way that makes it much easier to maintain and sustain. So you'll likely see this theme coming up in our findings over and over again. A few years ago, SPRC developed the Leaving a Legacy report, which was a report that SAMHSA sent us to do where we went and looked at the literature regarding program sustainability from several different fields and wanted to see what was out there in terms of any themes or strategies that were recommended. We also did a survey of Garrett Lee Smith alumni, so that includes states, tribes, and campuses. And we chose to do some in-depth interviews with selected survey respondents. So often people who were sustaining their suicide prevention work either at the same level or higher a year after their grant funding was over is who we talked to learn about what they thought was helpful. And so this report summarizes those findings that we found and also lists 5 recommendations that we came out with through the themes of what we heard. These are the 5 recommendations. So adopting a sustainability mindset, building momentum, fostering leadership, cultivating partnerships, and securing resources. And Bonnie and I are going to go through each of these briefly today just to introduce you a little bit more in depth to what we learned. We do have another resource that should be available pretty soon that really helps translate these recommendations into actionable steps and offer some strategies and some planning tools to help you do that to make it a little bit more concrete. So the sustainability mindset, what we heard from people was this idea that they didn't wait until their 3rd year to think about what they were going to be able to continue, but that it was really something that they tried to incorporate from the beginning of their planning and to be really intentional about how they went about implementing or institutionalizing programmatic activities. So having that vision for what will be in place after funding is also really helpful if you can articulate it for your grant team, for your partners, so that you can have some consistency in what the goal is that everyone is working towards. And then having sustainability in mind from the design to the implementation phase. I think as I've mentioned, as you make some decisions about what types of training related to costs or related to who you're going to partner with or who you're really going to target on your campus, that thinking about how this will be able to be continued after the grant is over is helpful. And then having that vision also helps in terms of making decisions and adjusting throughout the grant. So if you have some way to sort of come back to what did you initially envision for yourselves, how is it going, how are your trainings and activities going. Having that mindset is really helpful. Another piece is about catalyzing momentum. So over and over again, we hear from people that engaging their stakeholders, building partnerships, making sure they're communicating to their administrative people on campus is just really helpful. And so if you can make sure that you are taking the time and making the effort to engage diverse stakeholders on your campus, it will help in terms of your participation in your program, hopefully, but it can also help in identifying additional resources or having champions who can really communicate the successes of the program. And so this can sort of look different based upon your campus and who you see as really playing a major role. And some campuses have thought about this in terms of what data you collect to make your case to administrators, what can really prove that you are making a difference that's important to your campus. And I am going to pass it over to Bonnie.
Hi, everyone. So the third actionable item that we suggest is fostering strong leadership. So that's, really important to have this person who, as the quote says, has the passion and persistence, but can really help you further your grant activities. You want this person to be consistent and just to be a strong leader, someone who's the natural helper, the champion that you need to enhance your suicide prevention programming. And your leaders should have the skills and ability to articulate why this is so important. And it's also important because there is a high level of turnover we found in suicide prevention programs. And also on college campuses, there's high turnover there as well sometimes. So you have to deliberately foster someone to lead the next generation of suicide prevention leadership in your community. So, it's not just, you can't be the only person moving everything. There has to be this next generation of people who can also build upon what you're doing. And then another key part, of course, is cultivating partnerships. So we say identify various partners, but the key part of that is the variety part. You want it to be partners from across your campus and in your community, and you want them to become the joint stakeholders who are invested in the success of your programs. These partners are so necessary for sustainability. And you want to build strong relationships with them. And one way of doing that is making clear to them that they have a clear focus and purpose by being your partner. So telling them specific ways you'd like them to help. And continually assess which partners are not at the table and should be included. And also keep in mind that some partners needed for sustainability, they might be different than the partners that you needed when you launched your program, so when you wrote the grant. So keep that in mind as well. And then lastly, secure additional resources. And I love this quote from this campus alumni. I never had the thought in my head that it would stop once the money stopped. What was in my head was that I had to set up the support systems internally in order to continue suicide prevention efforts. So that's really key. So really think about who can I partner with for these resources and what cases can I make for these continued resources. We recommend prioritizing securing resources to support staff to coordinate the ongoing suicide prevention efforts. For example, trainings, because activities are usually the programming or activity that stop once the suicide grant ends. You really need that central coordination. And many programs have found that even a low level of continued financial support can sustain grant activities, because really the GLS grant has already built the supporting infrastructure and capacity. So if you go back to Sheila's house metaphor, this GLS grant is helping you build the house, and that took a lot of money and effort to build that house. And after your grant ends, what you really need is the money for maintenance to repair the roof every couple of years and to check your air filters and, fix your windows or whatever. So just kind of thinking about it that way. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Sheila.
Great. So we actually have a quick poll. We don't want to spend the whole time talking at you, so we're curious to hear from you as well. So Zoe, could you bring the poll out? Great. Okay, so you'll see on your screen that you have a couple of different options. So we're curious to hear what GLS grant activity you're the most excited to get started on. So feel free to just choose out of the options there. And if you don't see an option that fits what you want, feel free to type it into the chat box on the left. Great. So I see a lot of people are typing in educational sessions and several putting in training. If anyone would like to share, if you know what types of educational sessions you're thinking about, feel free to type that into the chat box as well. If it's for a specific population, if there's a specific program that you're thinking about bringing in, it'd be great to hear from some folks. See that evaluation is losing out here. MBSR training. And could you, I'm pretty sure MBSR stands for mindfulness-based stress reduction. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. Conducting a conversation tonight focused on suicide prevention. Right? Social marketing campaign. Mm-hmm. I see a few people are typing, so give it another minute or so. Expanding mental health first aid. Great. Resiliency training and improved campaigns and PR materials. Great. Yep, we know a lot of campuses do communications work, whether it's a campaign, a full-fledged campaign, or developing materials. So I can see the excitement about that. That's great. We move the poll. Okay. So these are our wonderful panelists today. We have Shane, Leslie, Rita, and John, and I'll have each of them say a little bit more about their campus and what their role is before they get started talking to us today. So we are going to hear, and they're all either current or alumni grantees, so either in their second or third years or they finished their grant. And I wanted to mention just before we start hearing from them that many of you, it's possible that you might have questions about, grant reporting or grant admin types of questions, but what we're going to be hearing from our panelists today is really going to be more about specific aspects of their program planning and implementation and strategies that they tried. So if there are any burning questions that are more related to the grant admin piece or the hiring piece or kind of management piece that you think the panelists that you'd really like to hear them speak to, feel free to type it into the chat box at the end. We're going to save a good chunk of time for Q&A, but what we've asked them to really focus on is sort of their strategies that they used. And we will have time at the end for longer Q&A, but if someone's speaking and you have a clarifying question or a burning question that you don't want to get lost, feel free to type it into the chat box that will be up while everyone's speaking, and Bonnie or I will make sure that that gets answered in a timely fashion. So I'm happy to turn it over to Shane first, who's going to share a bit about their communications work.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'm just going to start off by introducing myself and my program. I'm actually currently at the University of South Alabama, but I'm a former graduate assistant at the University of West Florida, and that was my role on the grant the whole time I was there. So the University of West Florida is a mid-sized, we have about 12,500 to 13,000 students on campus. Southeastern University, we're from Pebble, Florida. Majority white campus, but majority female campus, as is a lot of Southeastern public universities, but pretty widely diverse outside of that. So the targets of our campaign specifically were four different facets when we started out. We wanted to develop, first off, a social marketing campaign, which I'll talk more about today. And then from that, we also had gatekeeper training. We specifically used QPR throughout the entire time of our grant. We had a suicide prevention coalition where we met to discuss the policies and procedures about our grant and on our campus, and then a student org network. So I just want to start off by talking specifically about our social marketing campaign. So this social marketing campaign actually started in development before our grant time began. I was actually a volunteer and helped out with one of the principal investigators on the grant, Dr. April Glenn, and she began the development with our marketing department. And this is our first year posters that you see here. And the keys to success of this grant specifically were student-led, student-informed focus groups. Throughout all 3 years, we utilized these to develop our messages, pictures, graphics, everything involved with the campaign. The students help us decide how big things should be, what they should say, how we should present it, who should be in the pictures, a wide array of demographics. So the first year was really a learning process. We didn't really know who we should target specifically on our campus. Psychology students were the easiest to get. We have another PI on our grant, Dr. Susan Walsh, is in the psychology department, and she was able to give extra credit for participation in these focus groups, so we were able to get that group of students in the first year. We had posters developed in the beginning of the first year with messages on them and had the students decide what they liked, what messages they liked the best, and this ask, listen, get help really stuck. And as you see on 2 of the posters, we have that, and then another one that we use throughout them is that there is hope, reach out, UWF cares. And that kind of goes with the goals of our campaign. We really wanted to have students reach out and seek help, not only for themselves, but for other students that they perceive to be struggling as well. So in each one of these focus groups, we had 3 separate ones each year, 3 different focus groups. It ranged from 5 to 10 students per focus group. So basic qualitative information. We had a set, it was semi-structured. We had a set group of questions. What do you like about the messages? What do you think this campaign is supposed to be doing? What do you think the goals are of this campaign? And that's really how we started it out. The second year, which is the posters that I'm going to bring up next, is much more targeted. On our grant, we wanted to target military veterans and LGBT population, and target them because suicide rates among military veterans and LGBT population are not only high, but and especially among military veterans seem to be increasing. So with our posters and with these, specifically in our focus groups and in the, we had targeted meetings with the director of the Military Veterans Resource Center, trying to get, okay, what messages will be best conveyed to this population. We developed these messages based on those meetings. With the You Are Not Alone poster for LGBT population, we talked to the GSA on our campus, gay members, student members on our campus that were more than willing to help us out develop these posters, messages, and we developed them and then showed them again to our focus groups. We had multiple other posters on there that they said, okay, can you change this? Can you add this? Especially like courage is helping a buddy. Adding that little message gave a little bit more information that would help. And again, you see that there is hope, there is help, reach out, UWF cares. That's consistent. And with all of these posters as well, you see the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the call number for our specific counseling and wellness services on our campus. Lastly, we have, this is our third year of our campaign, so you just saw the second year. The third year, we used campus-specific, empirically driven statistics. So these statements were given to the entire campus. This is a representative sample of our campus of about 1,100 to 1,500 students. We had 3 different samples that we got these statistics from, and then we put them on the posters to show that students will want to talk to someone if they're in need of help, or would intervene if someone told them they were thinking about suicide. So some of the keys to success in this campaign is specifically using safe messaging guidelines. We wanted to really discuss positive, behaviorally oriented messaging. So it's doing something, going out and helping other students, wanting to intervene if someone told them they were thinking about suicide. One of the steps of QPR is intervening when you hear the warning signs and risk factors accompanying suicide risk. So we wanted to make sure that we were utilizing those safe messaging guidelines, and that's actually one of the things that we got from our SPRC resources. I know that's one of the things I wanted to talk about specifically. I think we got that either through the listserv or the webinars. I know April got those messaging guidelines from SPRC. So we wanted to specifically target that at each point in our grant. Some mistakes from these campaigns that we want to let you guys know about so it could help you out. Make sure your goals and purposes are clear when you're discussing it with different campus departments, such as the marketing department, including a timeline. So if you're going to be working with a marketing department either on your campus or in the community, make sure that you are specifically goal-oriented and tell them what you want, because it'll make things faster, speed it up. You won't get people holding hands on posters. We had some fun with some of the pictures they come up with. So another thing I wanted to let you know is we made agreements and made connections throughout our campus. We talked to the assistant director of housing and asked them specifically if we could place our posters in unique eye-catching locations that are not normally, seen by students, that students just pass by, the big poster array that students may just normally pass by without looking. We wanted to make sure they were seeing our posters since we were putting so much effort and time into them. Again, we talked to the director of Military Veterans Resource Center, and we had our connection with the assistant director of marketing. So we really wanted to utilize our resources on our campus as best as we possibly could. Again, we wanted to utilize, and just because I was a part of the campaign at every level, the social marketing campaign, it was really a peer-oriented, peer approach, and Dr. Glenn really liked that I was a part of it, and it helped with the students relaying these messages, because they felt that I would be a good ear for them to listen to, since I was also a student on campus. So we took those statistics, we took everything they talked to us about, and it really helped shape and form our campaign. I think that's about all I have.
Shane, did you all do a survey on your campus? Is that how you got these statistics?
Yes, this was actually an emailed survey out. It was a self-report survey, and it was sent out. There was a lot more information on it that we're actually going to utilize for other needs and purposes, but yes, these questions were asked of students, and they answered answered them either yes or no, or effective, not effective, on a Likert type scale.
And then I know that one of the things that you sort of changed course on was that the posters look pretty different throughout each iteration from when they were first created. Yep. And was that all the student feedback?
Yeah, actually, and especially with the last couple years, the design got much better. I liked the design much, and specifically, if you could tell, the big words, ACT, treatment works, those behaviorally oriented short messages, what students liked. They don't like a ton of words on there. The smaller words that are on there was the necessary information that we wanted the students to have, but we wanted these big messages to grasp their attention, and then maybe they hopefully read the vital information that's on there.
Yeah, that's really great. And I'm sure if people have questions about it, we'll get to those as well. I know a lot of people, are wanting to do focus groups or wanting to create some materials and things like that. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, if anyone has questions, feel free to put it in the chat box, and I'll be glad to answer them.
So I am going to move us next to Leslie. Leslie, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about your campus and your role, that'd be great.
Sure. Sure. My name is Leslie Geer. I work at George Mason University in the Counseling Center. George Mason is a large public institution with 34, roughly, 1,000 students. We have 3 distributed campuses. Our university has commuter routes. We have a lot of students who commute back and forth, but I would say in the last probably 5 to 7 years, we've been very intentional about expanding our on-campus housing. So currently we have around 6,000 students living on campus. And so we're actually in year 3 of our grant, which is really hard to believe. And I actually remember this webinar, doing this a few years ago. So I'd like to share with you just some of my thoughts around planning and sustainability and mistakes. So one of the things that I think is really important to consider is managing your expectations, which I know sounds pretty straightforward, but I think it's something to really keep in mind. What I've noticed, at least at my institution, is that even with the best of intentions and even with really motivated people, everything just takes longer than what you think. And so I think when we first started our program, we were really, really eager to do a whole bunch of things. And I think it just wasn't working for us. And had we had a better understanding of sort of some of the institutional requirements, and it probably would have gone a lot smoother. So that's just one of the things that I encourage you all to keep in mind. We also, in conjunction with that, one of the emphasis of our programs was that we really wanted to emphasize training, and we really felt like this was the easiest and best way for us to have a sustainable program. And we wanted to have our gatekeeper training to be available to students coming in as freshmen, either through their survey class, which is called University 100 here, or Psychology 100. And so we were really struggling with how to do that. And so I think we also offered too many trainings. I should take a step back and say that we are in Virginia, and we actually have a lot of great mental health resources available to us. And one of them is that we get at-risk licenses. And so we also have a gatekeeper training called Mason Cares, which is based off of Campus Connect. And doing both of those just got to be way too much. We were trying to sell at-risk, and we were trying to sell Mason Cares, and we just couldn't. It was just not working for us. So what we decided to do was sort of meet somewhere in the middle. Mason Cares is 2 hours in its origins, and we also wanted to offer it as a 1-hour training as a way to maybe reach students through the survey classes or Psychology 100 classes. And so we just decided to stop at risk, which is a great training. It just wasn't right for us, and just exclusively do our own gatekeeper training. And it's actually worked out really well. So I'd also like to talk with you about sustainability. As I mentioned to you a few minutes ago, we really wanted to emphasize training. And how we could do that was kind of doing some investigation around already in place systems in terms of curriculum infusion. And what we found was, as Shane sort of mentioned in his, there's a great opportunity within psychology and other sort of human services courses for extra credit. And what we noticed was if we were offering our training as extra credit, students would come and they'd actually be pretty excited to do the training because it was something they were interested in because they were signed up for a psych class. And through that, we've sort of built up credibility among students and teachers, and we've actually gotten more people interested in us just coming to the class to teach it. So we've been able to kind of build a reputation that way, which has been really awesome. Another thing that in terms of sustainability is, you know, there are only so many people that work in the counseling center who could give the training. So we sort of started bumping up against, well, if we're going to grow this training, how do we actually have people deliver it? Because I certainly can't do all of them. So that's when we also look to this other in-place system of, hey, we have psychology students here, we have social work students here, we have counseling students here. This would be a great training opportunity for them as graduate students. So what we've started to do this year is train graduate students to become trainers. And that's actually been really great. And similar to Shane, you know, we have a faculty member from the psychology department who's super motivated, really excited to be involved in our project. She has been huge in helping us get connected with students, and she's been a real advocate for us. So this year, we're training our first group of, I think, 6 graduate students to become trainers. And they're getting trained in, you know, obviously how to deliver the content appropriately, but we're also spending a lot of time with them talking about, you know, in place, university systems in place if they run into issues with students or if they become concerned about a student, where to refer. And it's been actually a great experience for the graduate students too as they look towards applying towards internship or looking for jobs. It's been really helpful for them. And another way that I think we've been able to maintain our relevance on campus has been through graduate students outside of psych. We hired 2 graduate students right out the gate, and they've been hugely helpful for us in keeping us relevant and interesting to students on campus. So if I have any recommendation for you all, it's to get as much buy-in and as much participation with students as possible because they're obviously the primary target for your campaign, so it's really important to know what they think is important, and oftentimes know way more about how students are reached and connect than you do as a faculty person. And then also for sustainability, you know, in terms of, we've done a lot of really cool outreach, and part of that has been because we have funds and things that we probably wouldn't have been able to do before, we could do now. But you also bump up against, well, I can't always do that. So we've spent a lot of time developing materials that we're going to be able to use even after the grant is over. And a couple of the things that I'm most proud of are the manual that we created that goes along with our gatekeeper training. It's been a really great resource. I think it's uploaded on the grantee pages, but the students really like it. They've been really receptive to it, but it allows them to be more engaged throughout the training, taking notes. It provides you know, the questions to ask, gives them scripts on how to talk to students in distress, and it just allows them to be a little bit more engaged in the training. And that's something that is not that expensive to continue, and that has been a really positive addition. We've also had we've made bookmarks for students that we've been able to distribute through the library and through the bookstore for when students buy new books. We can put these bookmarks in their books and they can just have it as a resource. So it's like really small things that make a huge difference and actually have a pretty big reach. So I would definitely encourage you to spend some time thinking about things that you'll be able to keep with you beyond the life of your program. And actually, this is a repeat slide. I noticed that this was a duplicate, so I'm going to keep it moving. So this last slide is a slide that has a lot of our events that have taken place on campus. The top left you can see is Sun Silence Packing, and the bottom two photos as well, which I'm sure most of you are familiar. It's a traveling exhibit of 1,100 backpacks that come on campus to represent the number of students who die by suicide every year. Now, this was a partnership that we did with our Active Minds chapter. They paid for half, and we paid for half. But actually, what's come out of it has been amazing. I mean, we've actually had different administrators say, wow, we'd really like to bring this to campus every year. So even if you are only able to do it one time, what we found is there's been a lot of impact and a lot of interest and a lot of buzz created about it. And we've noticed a huge increase in the number of students who've wanted to get trained and become involved in Active Minds. And then on the right-hand side, we have an event that we've been doing every year too, called Chalk It Up, which we just basically reserve the entire quad, and students can just come out and write whatever they want in terms of messages of hope and resilience. And that's been a really successful thing too, which is not expensive to do at all, which is like another way of using the infrastructure that's already created at your university. And now what we're doing is using images from that event to make a calendar for the upcoming year as a way to continue to expose students to the message year-round. And then lastly, last year we did a walk, the Out of the Darkness walk on campus, and we had a number of students involved in that, which again is like another way to do an event for something that was already in existence, but helped us to create more buzz on campus as well. So my recommendation to you lastly is just, and I think I've said this throughout the call, which is if possible, just look to find things that are already in place. I mean, I've learned things that I didn't even know existed that I think will be available and will be used long beyond the lifetime of the grant. So thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. I wanted to ask you, I know you mentioned your Active Minds chapter, and I know that people sometimes have mixed results in how active or involved their students are, or they might have student groups that are somewhat inactive, but I didn't know if you had anything more you could say about, why you think, your students, or how you were able to get your students more engaged.
Yeah, sure. So when we initially wrote our project, we had asked for funding for peer educators. So the first time we applied, we didn't get funded till not the first year, but the second year. And in that year that we were in between applications, Active Minds came to campus. So we didn't actually feel like we needed the peer educator component because we now had this Active Minds chapter. So it was a conversation with the faculty advisors that the funds that we used that we had applied for peer educators, we would help fund some activities with Active Minds. And so through that, we've been able to have really great connection with that group of students around the kinds of activities that they want to do, and that's been great. So in terms, and I think it's because of the resource that they've had that they've been able to do different events that have generated more interest in the organization. When the first year that they were on campus, they, I think, maybe had 5 or 6 members, and then I think in September their membership went up to around 70. And I think I mean, they are an awesome group of students, and I cannot take credit for their awesomeness, but I think largely a way that they've gotten more interested in it is because they've been really creative and really and really engaged with the campus around issues of mental health. And I think they've been able to do that partially because we've been able to help support them get some of the programming that they wanted. And their faculty advisor has a really nice relationship with our counseling center and is really vested in mental health. So it also goes back to what Shane was saying is, you need to find people who aren't necessarily in your department, but are still really interested in the cause of mental health on campus. And I think that just came together really nicely for Active Minds.
Great, sounds good, thanks. So we're actually going to take a quick break and do one more poll. Zoe, could you bring the next poll up?
You don't answer because we're not.
So the next poll is just asking what departments are you partnering with for your grant outside of health and wellness? We know that partnerships are so important to this work. I see people already typing in. Again, if there are any that are not on this list, feel free to write them into the chat box. I see a lot of people are talking about student affairs.
That's so funny.
And if there's specific departments within student affairs that you want to mention or clarify, please do that as well. Faculty, yep, that's definitely a popular one. Veterans Services, international students, Greek life, LGBT, great. These are all really great. So see, behind student affairs, athletics seems to be up there as well. The psychology department, I know that they often get involved in different ways. I know some grants might even sit in the psychology department and not the counseling center. Okay, lots more ideas. Social work, other universities, campus safety and police, absolutely. Especially with those crisis protocols, they often end up having to play a role in that. Human resources, journalism classes. We've definitely had some grantees who have worked with journalism programs.
Programs they work with on colleges.
Great, wonderful. So it sounds like a lot of ideas. Okay, so could we go back to the slides? Yeah. So I'm going to pass it over to our next grantee speaker, John Eggers. So John, feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm John Eggers. I'm the director of the Counseling Center here at St. Cloud State. And you do see this picture, except it's inaccurate because we got 14 inches of snow on Monday. And so just picture that all white now, and that's kind of actually what it looks like today. But we survived the winters up here. With regard to the grant stuff, the main thing I'm going to talk about is partnerships. Now, we're a fairly large, it's about 16,000 students on our campus. It's a public comprehensive. We have some master's degrees, but primarily undergraduate. We have about 13% students of color and about 8% international. So we have, I think, a very diverse campus, and we were interested early on in developing partnerships. So we did Cognito, both students and faculty, and we did QPR training, and we did a number of efforts with many people, but the main thrust that I want to talk to you about are those partnerships to get all of those projects going. You know, on one end of one group as far as partnerships were with folks that might provide incentives. So we fortunately had a local subway manager or owner here that we have a subway on our campus, and so she was willing to give $5 coupons for every student that took the Cognito or QPR training. And that was completely wonderful, completely her generosity, and it I think it really helped us increase the utilization on the students' part. And then she did that for a year, and then we had our local contracted service, a food management company. I think each campus has those, so and they always want to be doing something. They have to do some kind of give back to the campus, and so we talked to them about donating roughly a $5 gift card, and they agreed to that also. So for the second year, they provided that kind of support or incentive for our students. Now, as far as mistakes or lessons learned quickly, we never did any of the incentives for the faculty training things that we did. And you might consider that. I honestly felt like they should do it out of their own professionalism and goodness of their heart. But we had much more difficulty getting engagement with the Cognito and the QPR compared to the students. Other partnerships, though, that were really important for us, certainly, you know, you folks mentioned a lot of really good ideas about partnerships, and I completely agree with all of them. Most of ours were on campus. It says community partnerships, but most of ours were really just on the campus. I'm going to move the slide forward here, I think. Sorry. There we go. So the introduction of the suicide prevention coordinator to key people. We hired a person relatively quickly, and you know, my feeling was that she could do some of the work and that I would have to do some of the work. So I took her around to everyone that I knew at the university at, you know, director level, department level, both mostly staff, not so much the academic side, because I felt like I needed to get buy-in from the administration. So I took our coordinator with me to the President's Council, to the management meeting with the top 50 or so management folks, and then also to each of the Dean's Councils. So we have a total of 6 schools and colleges here, and I arranged to come into each of those Dean's meetings where they have their all the department chairs in their school or college come together. And I just spent 10 to 20 minutes talking about the grant and the things that we were going to be offering to people. And then I would send the dean and all the chairs the links to both the student training so they could give it to their students, as well as faculty trainings. So we had, in my mind, a multiple push, both helping students learn how to help one another, but also I really wanted to engage our faculty and staff so that they had a better sense of how to identify and help get a student the support that they needed. And that's why I'm talking both about the Cognito for students, Cognito and QPR, both for students and faculty staff. So we went to the administration early on, and as often as I could get their ears to help update them maybe on how many trainings we were doing, what kind of things we were doing, just so that they stayed in the loop and were aware of it. Next, we also created, you can see here, a Suicide Prevention Leadership Council. This was another way to kind of cut across the university in a hopefully a rich way to include and increase visibility of the grant efforts. And so we met on a monthly basis, and each month we would give them updates on what kind of work we had done on the grant, as well as spent some time thinking about how might we better get this message out to people, and really invited them to involve themselves in their department or in their college or whatever realm they were working, to try and get them thinking and helping come up with new ideas for involvement. Another one of the, or on that leadership council, we had like the head of health services, public safety, a number of academic faculty, particularly from psychology, that were interested. We had University of Communications. We had the Advising Center, Career Services. I know I'm missing some people, but it gives you a sense of the breadth of folks that we tried to include. Oh, we also had the folks that do our high-risk alcohol reduction, because we did a lot of work with them over the 3 years in partnering with activities that promoted both reducing high-risk alcohol as well as increasing awareness of suicide prevention efforts. And then, with all of these, you can see my last little quote. Our effort was to say, how best do we reach out to the students? So we also went separately to the student government. We went to the student organization leaders and met with all of them. And in all of these, we presented our invitation for they and their students to take the Cognito product, the QPR training, and to understand that we view them as being an important part in our efforts to help one another. I think it's on the next slide. I just have a few pictures. So these are a few of the projects we did, and I'll start on the left. The Blizzard Shack Block Party is actually a huge activity that our alcohol reduction folks had done previously, and then we partnered with them each of the years of the grant to include, again, the alcohol and suicide prevention work. And that is attended by, I think up to 1,500 students on a given evening when they do this, and so we did a lot of awareness building and invited students to do the trainings. You can see in the top center, Love is Louder project. That's through the JED Foundation. So we took a lot of their materials and learned about how best to put this on, and took this to our it's called our Atwood Center. It's the student gathering place, and did a lot of publicity and had students then give comments about how to show what love is louder than, to give them some voice. And I'm losing my voice, so I'll try and finish up. Down below center, we bring certified pets or therapy dogs on campus. And we do this around the exam time, so students can get some decompression and de-stressing with a pet. It was really a fun and a well-received activity, both by students and faculty. So we partnered with various departments there to get the word out. And you can see on one of them, it's actually a little bit small, but the name of our grant effort is called the PAC, for Promoting a Caring Community. And so on all of these posters, you'll see a small PAC logos on them. The final one is we just were really fortunate. The woman on the right side poster is a faculty member here, and she lost a father to suicide some years ago, and she's developed a play. It's a one-person play, and she gives a really thoughtful I guess, presentation on the various feelings that a person goes through, both for herself having a father die, but also for herself then moving on in life. I'm not trying to sell this for her. I know that she's done it at other universities, so if you're interested, let me know and I can get in touch with her. But she's just a wonderful woman, and it's a really impactful play. We had a couple of hundred students come to that, and it was really well received. So I think, let's see, I wanted to mention one of the things as far as the sustainability of these partnerships was toward the end of our grant, we developed a memorandum of understanding. And these have kind of official-ish kind of language, but we basically asked our various partners to commit to something. And it could be as simple as keeping the National Suicide Prevention number on your website, or having a QPR training once a year for any of your new staff or graduate students, or keeping awareness going in their own venue. And so we had, I think, 15 or 20 different departments commit to these. Some of them included financing Cognito in the future for their incoming students or student workers. And some of it was non-money, but commitment to participate in various ways. And then we follow up from our office to remind them and stay in touch with them now that our grant is over. I should have mentioned we finished our third year of the grant just this past October. And I think with that I am finished.
Great. Thank you so much, John.
Sure.
Did you create any MOUs with your off-campus partners as well towards the end, or was it on-campus partners only?
You know, the huge majority of these were on campus. I know it talked about, community work, and although we certainly worked with our hospital emergency room, the majority of our work was all on campus. And so I don't know that we had any MOUs with off-campus other than things that we already have going through the counseling center.
Mm-hmm. Great. And I also want to agree with this comment that Jeffrey posted, love the studying for exams is rough slogan.
Isn't that
I agree.
Yep.
Yeah, I also like the dog and glasses.
We were pretty happy
Well,
with that one, yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Jeffrey. And just, sorry, John, and just to remind everyone, we'll be taking questions at the end. And I'd like to introduce our last presenter, Rita Tabor from Miami-Dade College.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for staying online for so long. I don't know if it's good or bad to be last, but take a breath and stretch for a second. I appreciate hearing what all our colleagues said. I'm at Miami-Dade College. I didn't show a picture of the campus because it's 80 degrees with palm trees and water, and you don't want to see that if you're under 12 inches of snow. So I didn't want to do that to you. But I wanted to say that we are a community college. We have 8 campuses and 164,000 students. We're a Hispanic serving institution with 80% of our students are Hispanic. And we, what I want to say about community colleges is that we are a totally different animal than universities. And let me explain that a little bit here. We have smaller classes. We are more hands-on, but our students face a lot of barriers. There's unique challenges for community colleges. Most of our students are working. We have fewer mental health resources. As a matter of fact, we don't have a counseling center. So our model is based on resources and referrals. And because we have several campus locations, we have to use our resources to try to find something that would work for all campuses. And I would recommend that one of the most important things you can do in the first year is to explore what you have at your campuses, explore what offices you do have, talk to as many people, talk to as many students as you can. The bottom half of this slide here was a survey that our students conducted on what they needed and what they wanted for suicide prevention. And they wanted awareness and training and webs. Our population was not interested in brochures. They were not interested so much in print materials. I'm going to move ahead now. Some of the things that I wish I would have known the first year is that, to keep in mind, is that it's natural to feel overwhelmed a bit. These are wonderful grants, but there's a lot of reporting elements. There's a lot of different webinars to attend, and I felt stressed out by it, and other people I know in their first year, we're in our third year, other people in their first year felt stressed out by it. So take a breath. You'll learn what you need to know. And the other thing about that, the flip side of that, is recognize what you are learning. I saw in the chat box they posted the site for safe messaging. That's extremely important to learn. If you jump into something too fast and you don't get the foundational knowledge, you might regret it down the road. So
Be patient, be flexible with yourself. And the other thing is it's okay to change your proposed activities. We were originally going to do QPR. It turned out the assist training was a better match for us. We have a community partner actually across the street from our downtown campus who does assist training. And even though we wrote up our grant for QPR, we ended up using the assist and it worked better for us. So be flexible, and it's okay to be flexible. Some of the startup notes that were important to me, and I think I've heard this again and again this afternoon, is to pay attention to what you can realistically accomplish. The universities have a lot of different, residential life. You have a lot of different organizations that we don't have at a community college. So if you're at a community college, if you're at a university, pay attention to what you do have and utilize what you can with that. And as we stated at the outset of this webinar, keep the end in mind. How will your grant look at the very end? And focus on that. I found sometimes when I listened to webinars and heard all these wonderful things that everybody was doing, I felt that I couldn't do all that. But what I had to do is what I could do. And what I could do is work with community partners. Since we follow a resource and referral model, community partners became essential to our grant. Here is a slide of me and one of our community partners, Switchboard of Miami, and we did a lot of training together, and that turned out to be a wonderful partnership that I think will be sustained after the grant ends. I can't underestimate the importance of the guidance that we received from our prevention specialists. And I think that what I heard from some of my fellow grantees is that after the grant was over, they were a little bit disappointed in themselves for not being transparent about their needs. And it's difficult because you want to look good, you want your program to look good, you don't want to say you're not sure about something. But the more real you can be and the more honest you can be, the more likely you'll receive the help that is going to be best for you. One of the things that we're really happy about is that we formed a countywide suicide prevention coalition, and our SPRC people gave us so many resources that helped to frame what we needed for that coalition. So in order to do that, we looked at all those resources, we shared them. Basically, it was ask and you shall receive. What's next? I have to tell you that the cake in the middle, Be a Lifesaver, actually I did not decorate that. That was from the bakery department of our local grocery store. So even though the printing's a little bit primitive, I wanted to include that in this slide because I wanted to say, do everything you can to make the grant relevant, to make it fun. This slide represents, for me, some of the students who received resources who really have no other suicide prevention resources. The training for most of our students was the first time they've been introduced to suicide prevention. The panel discussion that you see in the slide was available because of the grant. The grant allowed us to bring resources together that we wouldn't have had otherwise. Throughout our grant is similar to what you have with the people writing on with the chalk. We have different projects where students were writing different comments, and as much as possible for us, it was so important that we had student-led programs and student-led focus groups and student-led surveys. We wanted each thing we did to reflect the unique culture of each one of our different campuses. So I was afraid of going over, and now I think I talked too fast. So I don't know if we have any, Bonnie, if you have any questions for me?
I do. I have a quick question, but no, you didn't go too fast, Rita.
Okay.
I just had a question because I know that we have some community colleges on the line. We have about, I want to say, 4 or 5 new community colleges who've joined the GLS grant. And I was wondering if you could tell us briefly about what are some of the challenges are engaging students on a commuter campus where you have less access to students because the majority of them don't live on campus, or maybe none of them live on campus.
Excellent question. Thank you so much. When you're looking at, for us and for a lot of community colleges, you're looking at a population that is part-time. Most of them are employed. Many of them are older than your typical college student. And so as a grant, we really are entrusted to find ways to engage our students. And it's also interesting to me that that same kind of connectivity that's important for the GLS grant is also the same kind of connectivity that community colleges are seeking to increase retention and graduation rates. So some of the ways that we work best is by working with clubs, with team projects, with service learning, with psychology professors, and as much as possible, sometimes I felt like I was campaigning to work with all of those different departments that we do have on community colleges, and to find ways that students would get extra credit, would get service hours, would get incentives, would get bonuses that they could write up for their letters when they're transferring on to four-year universities. So every angle that you can possibly think of to engage your students, you have to utilize. And by doing so, and by giving the students opportunities to design their own panel discussions, to design their own town hall meetings, to design, we've had some club officers or 2 or 3 clubs, the wellness club, the psychology club, the sociology club. The club sat down together and planned panel discussions, and for me it was such a wonderful experience to see that engagement and to give them the opportunity to step into leadership roles. We're in our last year of the grant, and I'm already missing the grant, and I think the thing that I will miss the most is seeing how much our students have blossomed when they were given the opportunity to work with the prevention through the suicide prevention grant. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. That's great, Rita. Thank you. Sheila, do you want to start taking questions?
Sure, yeah. So that was really great. Thanks to all of our speakers. We had asked them to speak to different aspects, of their programs, hoping that that would resonate with, the most of you as we could. So I hope that we have lots of questions for them. For those of you who have been holding on to your questions, free to go ahead and type them into the chat box now. If we heard Shane talk about their communications work. Leslie talked a bit about developing their own training and embedding it into kind of existing institutional initiatives. And then John talked a bit about partnerships, and Rita talked a bit about community colleges and their experience. So we'd love to hear from all of you if you have questions that you'd like to ask about. If there are any other, general things about lessons learned that have occurred to any of the panelists while you've been hearing the others speak, feel free to add that as well. I see that Jennifer's typing. I guess I'll go ahead and ask while we're waiting for some questions to come in, is that, most grantees do some sort of gatekeeper training. And for the panelists, I'm wondering if you have any advice on choosing a gatekeeper training or any things that you learned in particular on how rolling out your training went, or any successes or challenges that you experienced.
I can offer. Do you have me online?
Yep.
This is John. Yeah, you know, we had good success with all of them. QPR was slow to take off, but it was, I think, more, it took us a while to figure out how to get into, I mean, although we were doing these partnerships, to get things scheduled, to get people trained, all takes time. And by the end of the grant period, we had more requests for training than we could almost handle. And so I think, as one of the other panelists said, give yourselves time to grow this. This isn't something you can just shoot out the door and start presenting and producing, you know, suicide prevention. It takes time to get all this background kind of learning and preparing and strategizing done. But for us, as much as I feel the QPR has some limits, it doesn't use as diverse a language as I would like. For the most part, people did seem to like it, and also with the Cognito. The other thing I would suggest is we use surveys after each of our trainings, and it gives us feedback for social programming or social norming to say, you know, 95% of the people would tell a friend about this or are more likely to help a friend. So that surveying on your own after you present these trainings is important, I think.
Great, that sounds good. Does anybody else want?
Yes, this is Rita, and thanks for your comments, John. For us, we had to look at, you know, who were we going to train, and at first we had the different campuses. We had people identify on the campuses who they were inviting to go to the training, and from what I understood with the QPR, it was pretty much a self-study guide, which we just knew wouldn't work with our faculty and our staff. And our collaborator provided the Assist 2-day training, which is face-to-face personal training with role modeling and so forth. So that just proved to be a better match for us. And as far as students, and I saw one of the questions too, for recruiting students for advisory groups, I'll broaden that a little bit, recruiting students for training or peer training. You know, one thing I feel like, you know, by working with 8 different campuses, each campus is different. Each leadership style is unique. And sometimes, you know, community college, you have students for a couple of years. You might have a really strong psychology club on one campus, international club on another campus, service learning professor on another campus, medical students doing pro bono work on another campus. So you really have to go, to me, I have to go where the energy is. And you don't know where it is unless you just keep asking and asking and asking. And when you find it, you go with it. So I don't know if that helps much, but that's what it was for me.
I'd like to spend a second answering both questions as well, and this is Shane. On our campus, really for the students and advisory groups, we looked around, you know, and it was the small student organizations that really were already getting started. You know, some of the students were marketing majors, you know, but they were creating groups like To Write Love in Our Arms, and we had a Students for Suicide Awareness group on our campus. So it's just students that wanting to do it on their own, and then just seeing what students like grow out of that. So that was really a place that helped us in soliciting these students. And for QPR, for gatekeeper training, one thing that really, we had 2 things. One that we didn't do so well, and that went really well on our campus. We had the Vice President of Student Affairs on board with this as well. So again, with that partnership, he required all student affairs staff to be trained on our campus in QPR, and still has it required, and we still have a trainer in sustainability as well, and Dr. April Glenn, she's still a trainer and re-signed on, and we're still training student affairs staff continually, and having students as they volunteer, you know, and we advertise it to students on campus, and they continually come in as well. And then not so well as faculty. We were never able to get faculty, even though our PI was on the faculty senate, we were never able to get faculty sign on. So that was one real challenge that we never were able to overcome throughout our campus. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I would actually, this is Leslie, I would agree with that. Faculty has been hard for us as well, but kind of going back to Jennifer's question in the chat box, how do you get students from different cohorts other than psych? One area that's been really helpful for us, and I don't know what size your institution is, but there's like a survey class at Mason called University 100, which is just freshmen from every possible major, and we've really tapped into that, and that's been really helpful for us. Additionally, in our housing and residence life program, we have living learning communities that have really specific interests. Like we have a mindfulness one, we have a sustainability one, and so we've kind of developed relationships that way too, because it's like a group of students that I know are going to be excited, but aren't necessarily psych. So that might be something for you to look into at your institution. And then Dale's question of how much time do you spend with evaluation and data requirements? I would say I spent more time worrying about it than entering it. The scan, well, at least for the test, the post-training assessment, that was really, it's not that bad, especially because they have a Scantron that you can send in and do it that way. And I don't know if anybody else has other thoughts about the ICF evaluation. I don't think it's that bad.
This is Rita. I'm going to jump in about the data collection. I was when I was at another conference and someone was talking about a SAMHSA grant, and they said, oh, all the record keeping. And what I just decided myself is, I might spend 20 or 30% of my time doing record keeping between track and ICF and other things, and I just decided at the top, okay, it's part of it's the nature of the beast. It's part of it. I'm not going to make it an issue. But one thing I did want to say is what I found extremely useful is I do keep a master document. It happens to be a Word table. I know other people might want to keep it in Excel, and I just keep a master document of every major activity that's going to be reportable for the grant, so then I can check off, did it go into the PSI, did it go into the semi-annual report, did it go into the track report, and if a campus is saying, what have you done for us, every entry in there says the campus name, and it says the date that the activity happened. So instantly I can say, well, I was at Homestead campus 4 times, and these were the events that we had there. So, if you can do that from the beginning, and someone else told me too, at the very beginning, just set your mind up that you're going to keep up with the recording. You're going to keep up with the reporting so that it won't slide past you. That was a good tip that someone gave me that I've really tried to follow. So.
Yeah, this is Leslie. We do the exact same thing. We have an ongoing list of data, number of attendees, description, that by the time it's time to report on that, it's actually very easy because it's just copy and pasting. So that's a great tip that Rita is sharing. I agree.
This is Sheila. I just wanted to add to that question too, if any of you can speak to how you use the data that you got from ICF to inform your programs, your evaluation.
Here at St. Cloud State, we commonly use that information when we were putting out promotion of it. We would say, look, I'm forgetting the specific data points, but we made use of that information with the administrators and faculty especially to try and make that their incentive, as well as with the students to help them understand the value of it and the purpose of it. So we tried to turn that information back into further kind of fertilizer for others to make use of the trainings.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Shane.
Okay. I was just going to say I actually used the data from the post-training and QPR trainings on my thesis. It was very useful for evaluation of the grant. We're hopefully going to publish it. We were able to follow up with the individuals to see if they're actually utilizing what they were trained in, see if they've utilized any of the behaviors. We did a follow-up, a one-year follow-up, and showed that compared to a stratified sample, that the individuals were actually using the training more often than the individuals that weren't. Obviously, it could have some self-selection bias in there for people that wanted to attend the training, but thankfully they were using the behaviors that were taught within the training.
And this is Rita. One of the things that we found out too is for instance, we did a number of trainings for Public Safety Week, and at the different campuses, I used a short survey for the awareness workshop, I guess we would call it, and afterwards send an email to the Department of Public Safety that sponsored the event and say, 67 people attended, 98 reported that they would recommend the training to others, 80% had not attended a suicide prevention program before. Some of the written comments included, great, I'm glad I have the resources. I had no idea we had so many things that we could do to reach out for help. And initially that was just kind of like a feedback summary to the program that sponsored us. But I think that those short surveys and that providing the information back to the campuses was actually one of the things that's turning out to be most helpful for sustaining the position and sustaining some of the activities that were conducted. I didn't have to say, wow, we really need this, we really need this. The data said it for us. So everything you do, even if it's just a 3 or 4 question evaluation that you generate yourself, evaluate it because it's going to be to your benefit to have that data to share down the road to prove your case. Thank you.
Great. I don't know if there are any, we only have a couple minutes, but if anyone else has a question they'd like to type in, please feel free to do that. And just wanted to let you know that this webinar will be posted on our website at the link that's posted below. That's where you'll find the other archived webinars that we have. If you'd like to go back revisiting or share this link with any of your team members who aren't able to attend. These are also a few resources related to sustainability that we have on the SPRC website. Your prevention specialist can also help you find these if you ask them for sustainability resources. This is the contact information for Bonnie or I if you'd like to get in touch with us, or if you have any other questions. If you'd like to get in touch with any of the speakers, I'm sure they would be okay with that as well. And we can share their contact information with you as well. So thanks to all of our great speakers. Thanks to all of you for joining and sticking with it with us today. We hope you found this helpful, and we will see you on the next webinar.